Mr. Speaker, I want to pay a special thank you, a big mahalo, to Mr. Scott and to the Judiciary Committee for their hard work. I'm very grateful to the ranking members, the Republicans and Democrats. We cannot resolve this without seeing to it that we have a bipartisan approach on this. I'm particularly grateful to Senator Pat Leahy, who is the Judiciary Chairman in the Senate, for entrusting this bill to our care here in the House and allowing me to introduce it as a companion bill to the one that has passed in the Senate. I'm very hopeful that we can get a vote in the Senate and move this to the President's desk. Mr. Speaker, when the wrong computer equipment arrived in Iraq, the contractor ordered it, dumped it into a mammoth burn pit, and placed an order for replacements rather than sending it back. The government paid for both the wrong computers and the replacements. The contractor collected a fee for each, thanks to a cost-plus contract. Halliburton had drivers driving empty trucks between bases in Iraq, unnecessarily exposing the drivers to danger because the company was paid by the trip, not by the amount of materiel hauled or a flat fee. $186 million was spent over 2 years to build 142 health care centers. Yet only 15 have been completed and only 8 are open. According to testimony, the contractor lacked qualified engineers, hired incompetent subcontractors, failed to supervise construction work, and failed to enforce quality control. A large U.S. construction company was paid tens of millions of dollars to repair Iraq's schools. Many of the schools were never touched, and several that were repaired, and I say that in quotes, were left in shambles, one filled with unflushed sewage. At least 10 companies with billions of dollars in contracts have already been forced to pay, up to $300 million in penalties to resolve allegations of bid rigging, fraud, gross overcharging, delivery of faulty military parts, and environmental damage. $300 million in penalties. Yet some of these same companies have faced such allegations during past military operations in other countries. No problem receiving new contracts in Iraq. Despite millions of dollars in payments to U.S. companies, key pieces of Iraq's infrastructure, power plants, telephones exchanges, sewage and sanitation systems, have either not been repaired or have been fixed so poorly that they still don't function. How has this been allowed to happen? The United States government, directly and through the late Coalition Provisional Authority, has outsourced the war in Iraq like no other in our history, spending more than $50 billion on private contractors to provide food, water, gasoline, and other supplies, guard bases, drive trucks, and many other activities in support of our troops. But consistent with the administration's overall attitude towards spending public money with private companies, little or no thought was given to contract oversight or accountability. As a result, some of these contractors have declared the U.S. occupation of Iraq open season on the American taxpayer. Cleaning up this mess has been hampered by the fact that while anti-fraud laws protect against the waste or theft of U.S. tax dollars in the United States, there have been no statutes prohibiting sleazy business practices by American companies overseas. As we have learned in the investigation of the Blackwater USA contract, the Coalition Provisional Authority issued Order Number 17, which specifically exempted U.S. contractors from Iraqi law. In fact, one contractor was found guilty of 37 counts of fraud, including false billing, and was ordered to pay more than $10 million in damages, but the decision was overturned because the contracts were let through the Coalition Provisional Authority, and it was found that U.S. laws against fraud did not apply. Despite the fact that the Coalition Provisional Authority was created by the Bush administration under the Department of Defense, despite the fact that L. Paul Bremner, the overseer in Iraq, subsequent to the initial attack on Iraq, had an office literally across the hall from Secretary Rumsfeld, the Coalition Provisional Authority was not considered part of the U.S. government, and therefore U.S. laws were unenforceable. These practices are a flagrant abuse of the public's trust and the public's money during a time of war, and cannot be allowed to continue. House Resolution 400, the War Profiteering Prevention Act of 2007, will 1. Criminalize war profiteering as defined as contract fraud or overcharging for goods and services in connection with the mission of the United States government overseas. 2, violations of the law will be a felony and punishable up to 20 years in prison and fines up to $1 million or twice the illegal profits of the crime. 3, jurisdiction for such cases, no matter where the alleged crimes are committed, will be in the United States federal court. H.R. 400 was heard and considered by the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security and ordered reported to the full Judiciary Committee by a voice vote on August 1st. Mr. Speaker, among the many significant consequences of the decision to invade and occupy Iraq, marked by a complete dismissal of the need for intelligent planning and stunning incompetence in the conduct of the war, this problem has received too little attention from the news media, the public, and the Congress. Most of the cases of fraud, questionable business practices, and outright corruption have been uncovered and investigated through the efforts of the Special Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction, Mr. Stuart Bowen, Jr. Mr. Bowen and his superb staff, both here in the U.S. and on the ground in Iraq, have provided oversight and insight under the most difficult conditions imaginable for billions of American taxpayer dollars intended to rebuild Iraq and support our troops in combat. They deserve our gratitude. They deserve the gratitude of the Congress and the nation for a tough job well done. Mr. Speaker, this bill, together with H.R. 2740, legislation passed by this House last week to expand the reach of the Uniform Code of Military Justice to private civilian security operatives in the region, are two important steps this Congress is taking to clean up the mess in Iraq. H.R. 400, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the War Profiteering Prevention Act, will help end the open season declared on American taxpayers. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.